It happened because I was doing already an overland travel trip. So the goal was to travel by car from Serbia to Vietnam. And part of the route of that just happened to be Afghanistan. And of course, a lot of my friends and everything were begging me not to go. They said it wouldn't be safe, all of this stuff. I thought that there was probably inaccuracies in terms of how the media talks about the country, that it's probably not what we see in the news, and got a hold of some people who have actually traveled there before. There were other women solo travelers who went there, and they all told me, yeah, it's fine, it's safe, you can go. So I wasn't particularly worried and made it to Kabul through the country.
Welcome to a new episode of the Nomad Summit Podcast. My name is Christoph Huebner. I'm one of the hosts of the Nomad Summit. And next to me is sitting Mia Kercher, a solo female traveler with exciting travel stories. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Today we'll talk about some people would call it extreme places that you travel to. We'll talk about political dimensions of traveling. We'll talk about conscious decisions, meeting people, the differences between people and their governments and all those kind of things. And I guess the most extraordinary thing that people keep talking about you is your recent trip together with your cat Cleo, who is strolling around next to us, to Afghanistan.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that trip. How did that happen, and what was your experience in this country where I guess 99% of people in the Western world would be afraid to travel to?
Yeah, it happened because I was doing already an overland travel trip. So the goal was to travel by car from Serbia to Vietnam. And part of the route of that just happened to be Afghanistan. And of course, a lot of my friends and everything were begging me not to go. They said it wouldn't be safe, all of this stuff. And I just decided, one, I thought that there was probably inaccuracies in terms of how the media talks about the country, that it's probably not what we see in the news necessarily. And the other thing is I did a bit of more independent research, as in got a hold of some people who have actually traveled there before. There were other women solo travelers who went there. So I reached out to them and asked them, and they all told me, yeah, it's fine, it's safe, you can go. And yeah, so I realized it was most likely going to be fine to visit there. So I wasn't particularly worried. And yeah, basically drove the car from the north, border with Uzbekistan, and made it to Kabul through the country.
So what was that journey looking like? You started in Serbia because you were living there, or why was that the starting point?
Yeah, I was living in Serbia. Yeah, that's where I bought the car. That's where I started off.
And so then the route on the map was like, what are the countries? Serbia and then?
Serbia, then Bulgaria and Turkey. And originally I hoped to go through Iran, but Iran is not letting Americans come into the country without a certified tour guide at all times, which is really not my vibe when it comes to travel. So I went around through Georgia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and then Afghanistan.
Wow, that's impressive. For you, I mean, most people would say Afghanistan must have been the most outstanding experience in that trip. Do you confirm?
Absolutely. It was a life-changing experience. It was like stepping into a different world. And I ended up spending 5 weeks there. So it was quite a significant portion of time as well.
You were spending 5 weeks, but not only alone. You also met Orest, who has been on this podcast as well. So for the listeners here, also watch out for the episode with Orest Sup, where we're talking about his project Nomad Mania and his bucket list of traveling to rather extreme places and rarely visited countries and islands. I personally sailed recently with him to Palagruza Island, and that's where we recorded the podcast on the boat. And you met Orest in Afghanistan as well. So how did that happen?
Well, we met at Bansko Nomad Fest last year, and I thought he was a really interesting guy. So I interviewed him for my podcast, and then we connected on social media.
We'll link your podcast in the show notes below.
Awesome. And so then we were on each other's social media, and I was, of course, posting a lot on Instagram about my trip in Afghanistan. And he messaged me and he said, oh, I'm close by. I think he was in Uzbekistan. And he said, maybe I'll stop by Kabul as well. And I was like, yeah, do it. So he came and stayed in the same guest house that I was staying in. And we were in Afghanistan together. We did one day trip together, and then we ended up deciding to continue on to Pakistan together.
But it was rather in the later half of your stay in Afghanistan. So most of the time you spent time with Orest rather in the second half of your stay in Afghanistan, and the first part was you traveling alone as a solo female traveler in a country where women are rather suppressed. What was your in-person perception?
So first of all, they make a lot of exceptions for a foreign woman. So, for example, like women in Afghanistan are not allowed in the public parks, but they were letting me go into the public parks. So yeah, they basically were making a lot of exceptions. Of course, I was a little bit wary about visiting these places just because it feels a little bit unfair when like the other women are not allowed to go there and then you go in. It's a little weird.
How was your interaction with Afghani women? When they saw you, I guess you were also dressed differently from them. Did they admire your privileges, or were they rather hostile towards you?
No, I was dressed in their clothes.
Okay, so that you had to, I guess.
I guess I wouldn't have had to. I mean, as long as I was dressed modestly, I don't think that the government would have stopped me because, again, they're not really applying the rules to foreign women. But I did it just because, I mean, first of all, the local people really liked seeing me wear their local clothes. You know, everybody was complimenting me, oh, you look really good in our clothes. So it made them happy, and that's particularly why I did it. But the women were extremely happy to see me, extremely welcoming. And also, a lot of women, they will kind of sneak into the parks. There are like back entrances that you can go through, and the guards are not they're not super strictly watching the area. So the women do go in. So I would run into them sometimes walking around, and then they usually have a big carpet that they've brought and their tea and their snacks and their kids and everything. And so they just have me come and sit down, give me tea, invited me back to their place. There was one day I went back to their house with them and they turned on music and they were belly dancing and we were all dancing together.
So all the illegal stuff.
Yeah.
When I hear a lot about initiatives like underground initiatives of Afghani women organizing education, where they're now banned from schools and then do that like illegally at home. So there is obviously a lot of curiosity, a lot of desire to learn and get educated. Did you experience that as well? Did they ask you questions? Did they want to know more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. They were super curious. I think different people were curious about different things. So the men were curious about their things and they would want to ask questions. And then the women weren't necessarily as curious about, let's say, life in America or my life outside of Afghanistan, but they definitely wanted to learn. I hosted a couple of workshops around online marketing for some women so that they could learn to sell their artwork. They make a lot of jewelry, paintings, things like that online. And those workshops were very well attended and spoken about widely. I also came across one...
Hold on. Spoken about widely means like you have publicly promoted your workshop, your education program for women in Afghanistan?
No, word of mouth.
Okay.
So one woman is coming and she tells everybody in her family and all her friends, and then they also come, and that's how it's promoted.
So underground, behind closed channels.
Yeah.
Okay. But that brings us to a topic that's often discussed, not only among digital nomads, but in the wider travel community. To what degree is it ethical to travel to a country that's where the government suppresses their own people? Do you, with a trip there, legitimize their action? Do you recognize your government and their actions? Or to what degree is it more beneficial for everyone if you go and see and explore and meet people and talk to, let's say, the ordinary person in the street and to actually understand the difference between a suppressive government and what the opinion and the real life of the people are. What's your take on that?
I think it's a great question. And I think it also brings up the fact that there are many different groups of people who are suppressed in many governments. For example, in America, there are minority groups of people who are suppressed. Currently they're banishing abortion rights and trans rights and things like that. So you could even argue the same thing where those rights are being suppressed. So should you visit America and support their government? But even despite that, my experience going to Afghanistan was just people were so excited to see me. I mean, so excited to see a foreign person coming here. They are very isolated in the world right now. Afghan people can only visit 3 countries in the world at the moment: Iran, Dubai, and Pakistan. So these are the only places they can go outside of Afghanistan. Women can't even go to any of them unless they're accompanied by a guardian. And so people were just very excited to see someone from the outside world coming and actually caring about their predicament at the moment. A common thread that I heard a lot is that they feel very isolated and kind of left alone. Especially the Taliban have been in power for 3 years now. So the world kind of gets a big uprising, right, when it first happens and everybody cares, and then they sort of forget about it and they move on to the next big world event that occurs. And so I think a lot of people feel kind of forgotten about, and it creates a sense of more global community, having this feeling that, oh, somebody's here and they care and they want to see what our life is like and try to help in some way.
That's a very interesting point, and especially when you talked about like hosting a workshop in online marketing, that seems you can help them, you can empower and make them participate.
The Nomad Summit podcast is made possible by our friends at Kinsta. That's also where we host the Nomad Summit website. Our site is pretty powerful. It's not just a blog, it runs a full event calendar, a ticketing system, and it needs to perform reliably when traffic peaks around big announcements and the event itself. That's why we rely on WordPress for flexibility and customization, and on Kinsta for secure, fast, and reliable hosting. Kinsta is a dedicated WordPress hosting provider that makes it easy to scale, keeps your site safe, and gives you peace of mind with great support. If you're thinking about upgrading your hosting, check out the link in the descriptions. It's go.nomadsummit.com/Kinsta. It gives you a free month to try Kinsta for yourself. You'll also get perks like 2 months free on the annual plans, a 15% discount for non-profits, unlimited free migrations, and the ability to cancel anytime, risk-free. We use it ourselves and we highly recommend it. Check it out by going to go.nomadsummit.com/Kinsta. And now, back to this week's episode.
Do you think you had a sustainable impact? Do you maybe even have still contact with attendees of your workshops and see how they followed through and built something on that?
I definitely think it's something they'll never forget. And we do have a WhatsApp group called Afghanistan Women in Business, which doesn't get used too much. I think the thing that I found is we did our first workshop about some techniques, for building, selling your products on social media and getting followers and things like that. And then I noticed most of them were not making any posts. So then a couple weeks later, I said, okay, let's do a mindset workshop about empowering yourself and using your voice and this kind of thing. And so we did that. I mean, some of the women are posting a bit here and there, but I haven't necessarily seen them like go all in and be posting every day. And so I think it's really should be a longer term project than just a couple of workshops, because they really need more support and some more motivation. Yeah, I think that there's a big emotional impact that also comes with being suppressed in such a way where a couple of workshops maybe isn't enough to make such a big impact.
Did you come across some initiatives that have a wider impact?
Yeah, there's a great NGO that's there, and they have actually basically a school to teach women how to make jewelry, because Afghanistan has great natural gemstones and things. And so they have a lot of women going through. to learn how to make jewelry, and then they can make a profession out of that. And they have quite a good social media presence as well. Basically, they are partnering with people around the world, and then people kind of sell the products for them internationally and then transfer the money to somebody who has an international bank account who can then accept the money.
We'll link that initiative in the show notes as well.
There was also a guy who's running a school, an English school, and he has hired all female teachers in his school, and he has a lot of female students, and so he has sort of this underground. I think nobody really bothers him. He's not making a big public thing out of it, but he does have a lot of students and everything. And he's currently struggling in his school because the problem is not just the laws about women, but also the economy. Because currently they have no global economy, so people have no jobs, essentially. And people are living quite poorly, and they cannot even afford, basic tuition just for the basic textbooks and notebooks and things like that.
Teaching English is a good keyword. How did you communicate through your 5 weeks of Afghanistan?
A lot of people speak English there.
I mean, they had some English-speaking visitors for a while. So
yeah.
I guess that had an impact as well. But yeah, I recently listened to an amazing TED Talk of the founder of Duolingo and their motivation behind that, where speaking one second language is the key empowerment that can make the big change in your life wherever you are in the world. So if you are living in poverty, the one skill that has the biggest lever, the biggest effect on a career change is learning another language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely saw a big contrast. The neighboring country is Pakistan, which we all know, like, Pakistani people use a lot of platforms like Fiverr. They're very into freelancing and working online. But a lot of people in Afghanistan have not reached that kind of mindset yet. There's a lot of people who would ask me things like, oh, can you help me find a job? Or what can I do to make money online? So they really haven't done some YouTube searches or started to do research. They're really not quite in that mindset at this point.
But that also sounds like internet connectivity is widely available.
It's pretty well available, yeah. They do have issues with whenever they do construction on a street, the power goes out. But a lot of people are on top of getting their generators in place and being able to bring power and then have Wi-Fi.
So they have Wi-Fi at home, they have mobile phones?
The ones who can afford them. Some people can't afford them.
Okay. And you've done all that trip not alone. I mean, we say you're a solo female traveler, but solo only in the sense that there is no other human with you. But you had your cat with you all the time.
Yeah.
Her name is Cleo. She's just around here with us, and she's been traveling with you from Serbia with a car all the way. And then straight after your trip, or basically as a part of that trip, next step, we met in Thailand. You were around Chiang Mai. You had Cleo with you. So how does that work, traveling such a long way and overland and into different countries with a cat?
It's a lot easier than you might expect, honestly, especially in the car, because she likes the car. So she sits in my lap when we drive the car. And then if she gets bored of my lap, she goes into the back seat, and I've piled up a bunch of blankets so she can actually look out the window and take a nap. And she's calm. Crossing borders by land is much easier than through airports. Most of the time, the border guards are so unused to seeing pets coming through that they have no idea what to even look for.
Yeah, I once had cats with an ex-girlfriend together, and we were even only traveling within Europe between Berlin and Budapest. And I remember even for that, we had to have vaccination and a cat passport. And then finding an airline where we could onboard the cats wasn't so easy. We once went with the night train from Berlin to Budapest and had the cats with us in the cabin. That was quite nice and pretty fun, especially as we, even though the conductor told us not to, but we had a cabin just for the two of us. So we let the cats out of the box and they enjoyed it so much to have a look out of the window. They were different sizes. The male cat was a bit bigger, the female was smaller. And then in the middle of the night, we were driving through the winter wonderland outside. And that was so cute to see the silhouettes of the two cats sitting next to each other, watching the winter wonderland outside. And I imagine Cleo now sitting to me, super calm, to be a relaxed traveler as well, and a curious one.
She is. It's very cute to watch her look out the window as we travel. And I also have a little front backpack, which I carry her in when I'm walking around in the streets and such. And it's quite charming how the local people just love her so much. And it's also a great, it's so easy to meet people and connect with people because everybody wants to stop and say hello. And they want to ask about questions, and we get invitations to come over to people's house and have a cup of chai, especially in hospitable countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, Turkey also. Yeah, it just makes it really fun.
Pretty cool. And now you're back to Bansko, Bulgaria, where we're sitting here right now. So what were the steps from when we last met in Thailand until here?
There were quite a few steps because basically I had to leave the car in Afghanistan because I didn't have the right documents to get into Pakistan. So they require the stamp visa rather than the e-visa. But none of the surrounding countries were issuing a stamp visa. So I actually just gave it my best shot. I decided to just try to cross the border with the e-visa and see what would happen because I did that in Pakistan and it was smooth sailing, no issue. So I thought India will be the same. Tried to get across the border and was stopped with a hard no. They were just like, no, that's not going to be an option. And I did some research and realized that people are not able to get across the India-Myanmar border at all at the moment. So that's when I decided to fly to Thailand. So I arrived in Bangkok, thought that an e-bike would be a great idea. Could not find an e-bike anywhere, so I ordered one online and built the bike myself.
Sounds like an IKEA kit.
Right, yeah. Not IKEA, but something similar. I loaded up Cleo and all my stuff on the back of that bike after a couple weeks of this whole assembling it and everything. Set out on the rode for 1 hour, and the motor died and was completely shot, would not charge again. So I said, okay, it's a pedal bike. So I pedaled that bike along the Mekong River, and we rode the bicycle for 7 days until the terrain started to get much steeper hills. And then I decided to take the train the rest of the way to Chiang Mai. So once we got to Chiang Mai, I ditched the bike, didn't want to ride it through the mountains with all that stuff, crossed over to Laos, took the boat halfway down Laos. And then once we got into the capital of Laos, everybody was saying no cats are allowed on the trains, on the buses, anything like that. So I said, I'll just walk.
Oh, wow.
So I got rid of everything I had, like every last belonging other than my hiking clothes, my camping gear, and of course my laptop.
And your cat.
And the cat, of course. So we started to walk through Laos, which lasted about 3 days until I felt like my arms were being ripped off by my backpack, which contained my laptop inside, and not having the proper socks for my hiking shoes. I was covered in blisters, and I just decided, you know what? I'm going to give up.
Oh.
The walking part, anyway. So then the rest of the way, we basically just had to look for local transportation the rest of the way to Vietnam.
Okay. I guess for most listeners now, the big question is, how do you sustain this lifestyle? How do you make it happen financially? What's your job?
I've been doing a copywriting and marketing consulting business for the last 6 years, I would say. So this time I just kind of took it on the road, and it actually works out quite well because, yeah, sometimes I need to be in a city with Wi-Fi connection for my calls with my clients. And other times I'm just writing copy for people. So I just need a Google Doc, and I can write the copy and then upload everything once I have Wi-Fi. So it makes it pretty manageable in between those two things.
That's quite interesting. I mean, having a location-independent job, and I guess you do that as a freelancer. You're not employed. It's your own business that you run.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I guess that will inspire many of our listeners to do something similar. And for sure, events like the one where we are here right now, Bansko Nomad Fest, or the Nomad Summit are places where you find the inspiration, where you can meet people like Mia, learn from her, and start your own location-independent career or take yours to the next level. What's a way how people can reach you, Mia? What's the best way to contact you?
Instagram is great. Although I'm on all the platforms, you can just find me as Mia Kercher on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, Facebook.
We'll link all that in the show notes below. But you mentioned you have your own podcast. What's that one about?
Well, actually, that was an older podcast, which there are still episodes you can watch. These are about like launching and copywriting and, successfully selling, especially for online coaches and course creators who are looking to sell more of their services and products. So there are a few episodes of that. And I'm just starting a new podcast called Stories from Villages, where I am meeting people in rural areas where I travel who either speak English or I can find some kind of translator, and they tell their stories about what it was like to live in their country or interesting stories they have. So that's a new project.
Quite exciting. We're putting the links to all that in the show notes. Thank you, Mia, very, very much for joining this episode, and see you next time in person at one of these events. You're around our community quite a lot, and I think this is like the 4th or 5th times that we run into each other in different countries.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to run into you, and it's great to be able to share the story and have some also perspectives about the deeper aspects of it as well.
So more stories here every week. Thank you for listening, and hear you again next week. Bye-bye.
Produced by radioguru.co.uk.